Hi, I'm Jason Logson from Adventure Logs, speaking to you from sunny Port Isabel, Texas. Behind me, if you can see, is the island of South Padre Island, Texas. What I have today is the new Flysurfer Hybrid 2.5 meter, and I'm going to compare it to the Flysurfer Peak5 2.5 meter. Now today I'm mostly going to talk about the build differences and design differences because they are very, very different kites. If you haven't checked it out, above or somewhere will be the link to my review of this little demon, the Peak5 2.5 meter, so check it out if you haven't. I apologize for the wind, hopefully it's not too bad. So here we go. Alright, they're packed pretty similar. Flysurfer claims that actually the hybrid is just slightly lighter than the Peak5. And I can kind of see maybe why. We'll go over that. Packaging wise is the same thing. They give you a safety manual, they give you a repair kit, and they give you a sandbag. They're all pretty much the same. So let's go ahead and open them up and check them out. So here they are laid out side by side. Again, they're both 2.5 meters. That's the Peak, that's the hybrid. Let's start with the first thing, which is the bridle. You notice this bridle stops about here, while the Peak bridle is much, much longer. Also, there's quite a lot of differences in the bridle itself. The hybrid here, they have these cross lines that actually go to the other side of the wingtip. It reminds me a little bit of the Unity that Flysurfer put out several years ago. Another thing that they've changed, which I don't really like, is they got rid of the little metal rings. Now there are only these knots. Where if you compare it to the Peak still has the metal rings. I don't know why Flysurfer did this. Perhaps to save weight, perhaps to save money. Again, because they say that the hybrid is lighter than the Peak. I haven't tested that out myself. Now that they're sandy, it wouldn't be very fair in such a small size. When you're attaching these to your bar, it doesn't seem very, very secure, but I have probably at least 10 hours now flying the 2.5 and 7.5, and I have yet to have one come undone, so I guess it works. I kind of wish they would have kept the metal rings though, just a little bit nicer. Other than that, it looks like the lines are a little bit thinner. Where you see here, these are all nice thicker lines on the Peak, where for this hybrid they're even thinner. Another feature is these performance knots. So you can actually adjust the Z line and the tension, which gives you more speed in the turning and more power, and you can change your bar pressure a little bit. It does make a difference in the kite. Not as much in such a small size, but in a 7.5 it does make a difference. They both have this span line that goes across like this, where here this one you can see that there's actually more metal hoops, so you can see there's more metal hoops, so it goes through better. Where on the hybrid they're attached, so that's again some weight savings in the hybrid. Other than that, same thing, 2 pulleys on each side. With the way that the bridle is here, it's a little bit more complicated. With my Peak5, I can kind of just throw the kite out and just launch it, and I know it's going to sort itself out. The hybrid doesn't quite do that. So that's the bridle. Now we'll talk about the profile. As you can see, the Peak is stretched out a little bit more, where this hybrid is more of a D. It's kind of a fat wing. That's because the hybrid is a much lower aspect ratio than the Peak. Also, the hybrid has only one intake right here in the front that fills up the entire leading edge, basically from where this gray forward, where the Peak has these two little inlets on the wingtips, because again, only the wingtips fill up. This kite does take a little bit longer to inflate than I'm used to with like the Sonic or the Soul, again because it's only one intake. With the hybrid 2.5 meter, it's not that big of a deal, but the 7.5 meter, it does take some time. It's got this nice single butthole here, which makes it a little bit easier if you want to pre-inflate it. I have had problems since it doesn't look so big on this one, but I mean the 7.5 is like twice this size. You got to really make sure this Velcro is nice and tight or it will come undone. So talking more about the wing itself, the Peak5 here has a much smoother, more aerodynamic leading edge. It's nice and narrow, kind of like a shark nose, where this in the air becomes actually quite flat. I think it's purposely designed that way. So that means that when you sheet out the bar, the hybrid doesn't shoot forward like the Peak does, which to me, I like that feature, so it takes a little bit while getting used to. Some different characteristics. The hybrid will drift much better. The Peak turns much faster. The Peak is more of a dynamic kite where it's easier to backstall and you can spotter it, where the hybrid doesn't really do that. They purposely designed without it. The hybrid's going to flap a lot more. If you can look, there's only, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 of these plastic trimmer lines. Where here you got plastic trimmer lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So at first I didn't even think that it had the plastic lines because of how much it flutters. Again, I think they designed this that way. Also, that's why it saves some weight, because there's less plastic in it. Taking it out on the water, with the 2.5 meter, I actually like the hybrid better. It is, I would say, dumbed down, which I've taken out to like 25 to 30 knots. That's a little bit nicer. It relaunches better than any foil kite I've ever used. It drifts better, but it's more of a park and ride. I know a lot of people are claiming that the hybrid is a Peak5 that's water relaunchable. That is not true whatsoever. The hybrid is a completely different kite. And I will say that the Peak5 still holds the record for the smallest kite on the water. The Peak5 has a much stronger loop, so you can rig a much smaller kite. Since it's a little bit faster, I think that helps as well. But that's it, short and simple. If you got any questions or anything like that, I'm more than happy. Just put it below and I'll let you know. Other than that, this is Jason Logson from Adventure Log, speaking to you again from sunny Port Isabel with the bridge to South Padre Island behind me. I'll see you out on the water.